School, work, marriage, family. When I was a kid, I found it strange that we spend so much of our time falling into these routines without asking ourselves deeper questions about the patterns that we follow. Questions like, what is this all for? What's the point? Or what happens after we die? The world in general, and Western society in particular, seems to focus on these questions less and less as religious fanatics have turned believing in God into cringe videos on TikTok. But it wasn't always like this. We weren't always apathetic to the nature of our own existence, so why now? Well, there are a lot of answers to that question, so first I want to clarify that my question is not why has society fallen out of faith with the Christian God? You see, I believe humanity needs myths and storytelling to handle the tremendous weight of our own existence, but personally, I also agree with Nietzsche in that Christianity was never a sufficient myth to hold people over in the first place. As America became more and more progressive, it was only natural for more people to openly question the existence of God. And because so much of toxic Christianity is running from doubt by pointing fingers, there was never really an argument to be made that didn't rely on just quoting Bible scriptures. Which, as you can imagine, does very little in the way of convincing someone who doesn't believe in that book anyway. So, a better way to phrase the question would be, why has humanity become more or less uninterested with the concept of God as a whole? Could the failings of traditional religion have left a bad taste in our mouths? A bad taste that causes us to ignore conservative spiritual beliefs in favor of more progressive and laid-back philosophies and spirituality? Well, to answer this, I'd like to focus on you and how your personal relationship with religion may have scarred you so much that you deny yourself the very curiosity that you had when you were a child. My name's Jamil, welcome to The Path Unwinding, and this is a video for your inner child. So follow me and tell me if this sounds familiar. You were a curious kid. You would frequently walk outside after it was dark to look up into the night sky at every star you could see. And every time your head gets filled with 100 questions that you don't have an answer. But since you're a kid, you don't understand the weight of any of these problems, so you walk back inside and ask your parents. Now, if you grew up in the Bible Belt, there's a good chance your earliest memories are of someone you trust confidently giving you the answers to these questions and encouraging you not to worry about it because Jesus died for you. And this would start your long and complicated relationship with religion. From there, you went to church and sang the songs, but you never really got answers that satisfied you. In fact, you never felt like your curiosity was even being acknowledged, as it would maybe be written off as doubt or even fear. But what you did feel was this pressure that hung in the air. The pressure to conform to a religion that as a child you barely felt like you understood at all. If you're a woman, you may have noticed an unusual sense of pressure that older men and women may have made you feel about your own body as they explained the dangers of temptation and how the responsibility to quell that temptation was on you. And these types of situations would pile up until you'd come to equate God and purpose itself with feelings like shame, guilt, and sexual repression. And the same pressure that you felt every time you were in church became part of your very identity. You see, religious trauma is a very real reason to hold on to atheism and agnosticism as philosophical ideas. And to be clear, this isn't a video that claims either of those beliefs are incorrect. Not at all. It's just deciding that all of the beauty and unexplained miracles that happen in the world is something that just happened and constantly happened by accident requires just as much faith as a Christian worrying about what Jesus will think of them when he comes back. Agnosticism in particular feels the safest philosophy to adopt because it's seen as the most objectively true belief you can have. Maybe there isn't a God, but if there is one, we won't ever truly know who they are or what they want. That's safe. And it's perhaps true for the most amount of people, but in its attempt to feel safe, I think it misses out on one of the best rewards of having faith. And that is the pursuit of God, the pursuit of the answers to all the questions you had when you were a kid. Denying yourself this curiosity or pretending these questions don't matter can lead to straying dangerously close to nihilism as you get to your 20s. This was something I personally experienced as I began living my life in such a way to reinforce the belief that if there is a God, it doesn't matter. These questions don't matter. And I convinced myself of this because I was tired. Tired of shouting into an empty void as it seemed like no one could help me and no answer I found was sufficient. I'd given up on finding the purpose of life in general, or even just the purpose of my life, because as it went on, I found myself having a particularly depressing realization, which was no matter what I thought of, no matter what I read or what I wrote down, I could not understand how all of this could be worth it. both in my own personal life and life on earth in general. All of the pain, death, hunger, confusion, and sadness I didn't understand, so I thought the only thing I could do was grow up and stop being curious. So if you feel like religion has let you down in answering any of those tough to answer questions, don't worry, you're not alone and you don't have to stop being curious. But how should you look for God if both religion and philosophy aren't for you? Well, one of the things I realized was just as important as both is art. In all its forms, whether it's cinema or music, paintings, stories, or even just nature itself, art is an extremely important part of the human experience and one of the best ways we can communicate with each other. You see, I believe that we're all born with a sort of blueprint. And as humans, though we are all constantly changing, there is a part of us that has just sort of always been there and hasn't changed. I believe this because of the distinct feeling I often got whenever I learned something new, either about myself or about what I perceive the world to be. And each time it was this feeling like, oh, of course that's the truth. It always felt familiar, and that's how I knew that I was on the right path, or at least that I should keep exploring. So, with the knowledge that art in all its forms is just as important as God and the idea of your own blueprint in mind, you can ask your inner child what their favorite stories are, what their favorite songs are, your favorite cartoons, movies, video games, anything. It might sound absurd or even cringe to say that Star Wars is the first time I was introduced to what I now understand to be Buddhist principles, and that One Piece is the first thing that convinced me to truly believe in myself, but I would argue that it's no more absurd or cringe as believing Jesus died for my sins. Stories are powerful. They have the ability to change our lives if we let them, and it doesn't matter how much stock someone places in what you believe in if it saved your life. If it gave you something to believe in, I promise it's no more absurd than the traditional religion, and it's worth every bit of your praise and attention. So have this conversation with yourself, and see if you can find some sort of through line in all the things that spoke to you as a child. See if you can find what made you so curious and look for it again today. You probably won't find a concrete testament, no burning bushes to tell you where you should go or what you should think. But I think this is actually a good thing. You see, to me, one of the scariest parts of the human condition is our struggle to truly feel peace. Satisfaction goes just as easily as it comes, and the happiest of times can seem like little more than a collection of moments slowly turning into memories. All of this to say that if it were possible to definitively meet God, I'm scared I'd actually just lose interest. But if you decide to continue searching, I promise it doesn't matter how, you will be able to identify more and more of your blueprint the more you explore and have this dialogue with yourself. Recognizing this curiosity as a part of you and not a part of your childhood or a part of your trauma is the first step in finding who you are and what you believe in, and what God is to you. And from the bottom of my heart, I want that for everyone, whether you call it God or not. I hope you all find out who you are, what you believe, and you find a way to express them both unafraid. The last thing I want to highlight is why this is so important. Your spirituality and religion is something unique and personal, but the desire for comfort, guidance, morality, connection, and sometimes even tradition is a natural part of the human condition. And often it can feel like people or groups take advantage of this by selling you ideas of what's right and wrong under God. They use the authority of that name to peddle their distorted views of reality and offer you those same things: comfort, guidance, morality, philosophy, and connection. And all you have to do is accept their version of God. To be clear, if you take away one thing from this video, it's that if you decide you believe in God, then the first step you should take is understanding that who God is to you is wholly unique and will not exist in others. You might find similarities in what other people think or believe, but their answers won't be the same because their questions won't have been the same either. It's like whenever you try to cheat in class, but the person you're copying your answers from has a different version of the exam. Every person is unique, and while some people can help you find your own answers, you should always be cautious of people eager to push their own worldview onto others. Because often, they don't really even believe the things they're saying. They're just saying what they think will get them more attention. In a way, this is the same problem toxic Christianity has. The pastors and preachers engage in performative, over-the-top sermons almost as though they're channeling their true desire to be an actor. Sincerity gets lost in the act, and all that matters is convincing you of something. This is why I encourage you to have this dialogue with your inner child, because for me, that was the best way I could sort through all the external information and finally accept what it was that I truly believed in. And from the bottom of my heart, I wish the same for all of you. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.